Hey there. Welcome to Feedback on this fine week of November 9th. A big week in gaming because of that game that came out. Here to talk about that game and actually one other very big event that happened this week are Brian Leahy.
How you doing?
Abby Happy, who's ready if the lights go out to let us know how to leave the room.
1 Tango, 12 o'clock.
See, someone's
see
got
that?
affected by
Oscar
this
Mike.
game.
Yes, I can see that.
Patrick Klepek.
Hello.
And Matt Kyle, the man who wrote the review for the game of this week and is probably going to break all these records in terms
Game
of
of
sales.
the next 6 months.
Yeah.
Yes,
You may
Modern
recognize
Warfare
me from the
6.
angry comments threads.
Yes, and who generated many a spark and probably will continue to do so as there is a very long discussion between Matt and myself about his review of the game that is up on the site. But before we get to Modern Warfare 2, we're going to talk about the other thing that happened this week, Patrick, that I think it took me somewhat by surprise by the severity of it, and that is Electronic Arts.
Yeah, it's kind of Electronic Arts had their second quarter financial results, and it's kind of the case for John Riccitiello's restructuring of EA and trying to reliance on Abby almost just
And that's
It
enough.
looks
night
heavy
titles.
on your forehead, Abby.
she underestimated. And kind of whether John Riccitiello, when he took over EA a couple of years ago and tried a renewed focus on original IP, kind of the anti-Activision as EA had previously been, is not really bearing fruit. They laid off 1,000 people late last year and are now laying off another 1,500 people. And this year specifically, they're laying almost 1,000 people into the development staff. And we're still waiting to see how the rumors pan out. But it sounds like a lot of crucial development studios at EA may be affected. But it comes on the same day that they also announced a $300 million acquisition of Playfish, which creates a lot of the games you annoyingly see on your Facebook newsfeed. And it's kind of their gamble into whatever they're doing isn't working, and they're trying to look to the future a little bit with a $300 million investment that can turn into a $400 million payout for Playfish based on Facebook and social gaming. And it seems to have a lot of ramifications of what EA's gamble was and whether it's really paying out.
Well, let's talk for a second about what they hope to achieve through this. I mean, the way that I was reading it is that, obviously social networking games are, very popular. And is this kind of a way to help subsidize, developing more IPs, new IPs, despite the fact they are closing down some studios?
There's very little indication. There's actually indication they're moving in the opposite direction. That, like, John Riccitiello made it very clear that he said, Electronics has a core slate of games, label and sports franchise that will iterate on either an annual or biannual basis. And I think you know what those major titles are. All of them are selling or have sold in the most recent edition 2 million units or more. After that, we've got Sims and Hasbro, and frankly, anything that doesn't measure up or looking like it could pencil out to be in a very high profit contributor and high unit seller, this is sounding a lot like Activision, has been cut from our title slate moving forward, which raises a lot of questions about games like Dead Space didn't sell that much, although it's most likely we're going to see another one. But games like Mirror's Edge that we thought they would take a gamble on, it seems to kind of indicate we're not going to see stuff like that anymore.
Now, obviously, Abby, the city-state model, it was this idea of giving some sort of creative autonomy to a lot of their departments. I mean, that was the thing that I think a lot of us lauded, and it seemed to be bearing fruit in terms of innovation. Is this a case where, at least for me, I don't want to shame Riccitiello because I agree with what he did with. I'm just very surprised that it didn't pan out at all.
It was a nice try. It was critically well received. I think that a lot of people in the industry had a lot of respect for what they were doing, but it comes down to business and money, and those titles just aren't selling. And I think Dante's Inferno is going to be the last one that kind of seemed like it was out of that fold of kind of different titles that they were working on. And that's later, this year, and then that's it, I guess. And I guess we're back on to sequels and
I guess it could.
franchises.
Now at this point, Dead Space is a sequel. That's not a new IP. I think a lot of their hope might be we might still see Mirror's Edge, Dead Space 2, just based on the fact that sequels almost universally always do better than the first game.
Well, it kind of takes you to the second quote about the Wii. And because Dead Space Extraction was obviously a Wii exclusive.
Yeah. Something they were banking on. I think all of us were a little skeptical about that. But
And a lot of people were excited about it because, regardless of whether you thought it was a good decision to put it on the Wii and whether, putting the prequel to a game that wasn't on that platform to begin with was a smart move, it was a good game. And I think a lot of people were rooting as like, well, it's a good game. It's well designed. They clearly put a lot of resources into it, but it only sold 9,000 copies.
And that's what everybody,
Wow.
and that's what everybody said about a lot of the rest of the ones. Oh, this is a great game, but the units just weren't. I'm a mess today.
I think up late playing something.
But
a lot of things are falling off you
I
today.
am a little bleary-eyed and tired. Not just last night. Before.
I think shifting Dead Space Extraction to a different type of game hurt as well, because I love Dead Space and I played it, but I just don't like light gun shooters, and so I wasn't gonna boot up my Wii for the first time in a couple months to play a light gun
It does
game,
feel
even
like
though I
you're
like the
dialing
universe.
down. When it's part of a franchise that's been established as a different type of gameplay, it does feel like, oh, well, you play it on the Wii, so you can only handle this much.
Well, and also, it's the third time they've told that story. I mean, it was the comic thing that came with like the special edition of Dead Space, and you could get it separately as a comic, and it was the movie, like the animated movie they did. That's all, and again, Extraction, all the same thing about that ship before you get to it in Dead Space
So
1.
they're really kind of stretching the fiction of the
like,
prequel
even if you're
before the stuff
interested-
that we actually want, which is the next
Well, just
game.
like Brian said, like if you're not interested in a light gun game, but you are a Dead Space fan, you've already seen this story. So why
Right.
would I haven't played it yet because for that exact reason. I'll get to it.
See,
But-
I like the light gun stuff.
Well, so
I
do
love
I.
railed shooters, and the Wii is really where I go to for them because it's really the easiest and
Mm-hmm.
best console I think to play them on. But that said, I would have rather seen another like console 360 PS3 Dead Space.
Yeah.
Now, I think one other thing is that once again, a lot of the games that didn't do well, if we did think they were great games like Mirror's Edge, we actually did give them marks for the fact they're trying to do something new and different. But I was shocked last year that they would actually release Mirror's Edge in November, a brand new IP with a very challenging control scheme.
which they've since said that was a dumb idea.
But then, I mean, even though there were a lot of things that were looking to be in Brutal Legends' favor, that game too was up against established sequels, and I'm trying to figure out how much is a result of circumstance from bad marketing decisions, and how much really is that these games weren't going to have much of a shot, independent of when they were actually released.
I think it's that trap that, like, I don't know, PR marketing, whoever's caught in this industry of, if you want a big hit, you have to release it in the fall, and it's just that's only true of things that look at Modern Warfare 2. I haven't seen any commercials for that. Like, the ad campaign's been very low key, but it's still selling huge amounts of copies because people are aware of it.
You haven't been watching football for the past 3 weeks because it's been all over the place.
But you don't have like a $50
Matt and I
million
are watching the wrong
campaign.
channels.
You don't have like I think even Kotaku mentioned this, where like, you're not seeing billboards like all over
Stuff that Grand Theft
everybody's-
Auto we would expect.
yeah, like a GTA thing, but like people are aware of it. But like for this something, I mean, you've got a 5-month window where nobody releases anything. Like, where you could build some interest for the only game of interest.
It would
coming
have
out
been a
in
great
June.
summer game, something like that. But then also, Brutal Legend ran into a really unfortunate trap for the game in that it came out on the same weekend as Uncharted, and I think a lot of people chose to go with Uncharted that week, and then, well, I'll get around to Brutal Legend when I'm ready for the next thing. And then Borderlands kind of surprised everyone with being as good as it was and capturing as much attention. So I think the time where someone would have gone to Brutal Legend, instead, they went and played Borderlands with their friends.
And it'll be interesting to see how Brutal Legend sells through the holiday season and whether that's a game that people pick up,
It really
post
could have
holidays.
some legs.
Well,
It could.
I think, because I was shocked what the gameplay actually was, and I sort of felt they weren't very upfront with what it was until
Were
the
you not
very
reading
end.
our previews?
No, until the very end. That it was
When
so
the
heavy in the
multiplayer
RTS
event did come out,
Yeah.
and it was so heavy in the RTS because up until that event, I thought this was a hack and slash. It's Jack Black, and I think the word of mouth is going to suffer because of that. It would be one thing if people were expecting a heavy RTS game, and they'd be like, "Yeah, it's exactly what I expected."
Or
I
it was
like
just in the multiplayer. Like,
Yeah.
this is a two different game type. But instead, it was like, most of the game is some sort of
Well,
variant
and
on
so
the RTS.
much of that game and its success was going to be established on a hardcore base that was aware of Tim Schafer's work in the past and really wanted to support him. And I think it needed that groundswell. I think you might have a point there, Brian, that when suddenly there was just, hold on, what are we actually getting with this game? They lost that essential core base.
And also, are there enough metal fans to make that game a hit?
Yeah, I mean, or metal fans that will play.
That also
Play a
play
game.
video
That also
games.
play strategy
with
games.
with
That
a
also-
quirky
yeah.
guy like Jack Black. I mean,
And
that's
even
kind of
even if the word of mouth isn't all negative, it's like most people that aren't familiar with strategy games your friends are gonna say, "How was it?" And they're gonna be like, "It's kind of weird. It's not what I thought it was."
That's not a
you know?
glowing
Yeah, you don't have the
recommendation.
vernacular to go with it.
I play StarCraft, and I'm waiting for StarCraft 2, and so on the strategy level, it's a little dumbed down for me, honestly. It's
And
very
see, I'm
simplified.
not an RTS gamer, really, and so for me, it was kind of the perfect speed, and I actually really enjoyed it. I because I don't play more complicated RTS games for the most part.
Well, moving past Brutal Legend and looking forward, I mean, what are we dealing with now with Electronic Arts? I mean, are we looking at something that's, I don't want to say Activision light, but really is going to follow in the footsteps of Activision, or really the dark days of EA, which was only about 4 years ago?
I don't think we're going to see that, but they did hint in their conference call with analysts where they're going, and I think you can kind of see it. They talked about Medal of Honor is going to undergo a revitalization, which is currently rumored to be some sort of modern day setting, a la Modern Warfare 2. And they said that that's something that they're looking at for a lot of their core franchises that have become like creatively stagnant. Like they're going to be going back. They're giving Need for Speed to Criterion, like for something sometime next year. They're apparently going to be going back to their IPs that haven't done too much and trying to revitalize them. And it sounds like we're going to, over the next couple of years, like we might see sequels to games that have, like Dead Space, that have done well, but we're not going to see too much original from them. It's going to be iterating on games that have done well for them enough. And that's, I mean, I think that's kind of to be expected. Like Activision's the extreme. They are just annual exploitation of proven franchises. EA tried something, made some
Good for them for trying.
Yeah, I mean that's the most disappointing part about this is that regardless of what you thought of Mirror's Edge, like taking a gamble on something like that and even putting it in November, even if it was a stupid move, like was ballsy on their part.
You had to kind of tip your hat. Well, all I can say is if they're going to go back to their old franchises, Lands of Lore 4.
Starflight.
Right? Yeah.
Give me Starflight.
That's what we're looking for. Also, I think it's fair that a lot of us have friends and colleagues that work at EA, and we do wish them their best and that they can suffer through. It's
indeed
clearly a very challenging time. With that, let's also have a quick discussion about some stuff that leaked today regarding Project Natal.
Yeah, their MCV UK got some notes from a report, I guess a presentation that Microsoft was doing in the UK to start drumming up support for Natal, especially for retailers. And what came out of it was that it sounds like Microsoft is currently charging something under $80. That the low end would be $50, the high end would be about $80, $85 in terms of getting an entry point for Natal. The idea being that you want it to be impulse around the level of purchasing a game. Also that it's going to ship with about 5 million units in November, which is I think what we already kind of expected that's when it would drop. And that it's going to have a slate about 13 to 15 games, and most of them will obviously be first party, and a lot of them are going to be coming from Rare, which is something that's become increasingly obvious as a lot of rumors lately have been that they've had a lot of their hardcore slate cut back as they've become kind of a Natal studio.
Now, is the sense that these are going to be Xbox Live Arcade games primarily, or will they be retail disc games?
There's not really any indication. I could see them doing sort of a Wii Sports approach.
Mini
like you
games.
buy
E3
Natal
when they were
and
flipping through,
maybe it's
it seemed
14
like
mini games
arcade.
on a disc that
And
comes
Fable
with
3.
Natal. Yeah.
Fable 3 is the anchor for the hardcore, and everybody else gets mini games.
I know Matt and I were discussing that at the $80 price point, if that is in fact the price point, and wondering why that is less than the wireless
cut
adapter.
the wireless
for the
adapter down below.
Xbox.
My thought on this is that the wireless adapter will not be generating extra revenue, whereas you have to buy games with Natal. And I think, given the fact that I do believe there's going to be, if not an online component, then online purchasing for some of these games, it will stimulate Xbox Live subscriptions. And obviously, you're going to be trying out all these new things that you can wave your hands about. I think they really are going to be relaunching this console.
Definitely a gamble.
It's
on
a gamble.
on that level. Yeah.
I think you're going to see a lot of what happened with the Wii happen on a console that already has a really big hardcore audience. I think this is going to be very casual. You're going to see a couple things sell, and I think until it's not just mini games and Fable 3, it's not really going to sell.
But at the same time, they already have the built-in, proven hardcore audience. They're not going anywhere. Like, there's no platform for a lot of these people to run to.
And they're not sacrificing them. I don't see them lowering
their
their
whole slate
games.
is encouraging that they're not going anywhere from this. They're only adding onto it. So if they do a whole big marketing push next fall, rebranding it as casual.
Yeah, next year we're
other
still getting
than like
reach.
creating some message board threads with people annoyed with the ads, it's not going to change anything.
Well,
You're still getting
but-
reach. You're still getting everything past that. They're not going away from that. They're just
They're not going to have a year where their big game is Wii Fit.
No,
Yeah.
and that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying Natal might not start selling games and things on the 360 or any platform. I don't think specific motion-controlled stuff has proven yet. I mean, I saw it with the DS when the DS first came out. It was mostly tech demos for what you could do with the stylus, and the games were awful with a couple standouts until they decided, hey, let's just make good games for this platform and take advantage of
Same
what we
thing's
have.
going to happen here. But I think it is really important. I hope they skew to the lower end on this. I think if it is like $50, $60, right around the price of a game, and that comes with a bundle, that's really smart because, like, especially with like PlayStation's motion controller, like you have to buy something and then also you need the PlayStation Eye. So it seems like the money on that adds up pretty quick in terms of what you need for the hardware.
That kind of half-baked thing that can come from Sony, where it's like, good idea, just sit on it for another year and figure it all out.
Yeah.
But could it be argued that, like, they're targeting an audience that's already bought their game system? They're targeting, people. It's like, if you already say the people that are interested in that kind of thing bought a Wii, Are they going to now buy a 360 and this thing? And like, I mean, is that market gone? Is it still there to be exploited?
I think it's the Trojan horse that the hardcore gamer in the family, in the household, brought in the 360. There are these other people that when Natal comes in, will be able to access the system. And also, I think it's not a modest thing the way that you can use the motion control to go through the menus. All of that leans itself towards people buying things more frequently through Xbox Live. I mean, they love touting those sales figures of just all the crap you can now get through Xbox Live. And this just seems to just make it what was already a very easy process, like dangerously easy.
If I was a kid at home, I would never tell my parents about Natal because I would not want them to have it because I wouldn't want anybody else taking up time on.
But I mean, I think they could.
system.
Microsoft used to position the 360 as something you buy alongside the Wii, and I think now with Natal, it's kind of an admission that the Wii could be training wheels for Natal. Like you're already used to motion, you're accustomed to sort of moving, and then you've already got your kid's 360 and he shows you Natal, and you're already sort of accustomed to the idea of moving. That's not a weird thing. Taking the controller out isn't as big of a step as it is, picking up like a 360 controller or a PS3 controller.
Well, the game nerd in me really is my hopes for Natal is I hope at some point they find a way to use it to kind of revitalize the point and click adventure genre, like one of those like CSI style games or whatever,
That
where
could be cool.
you could reach in and grab things and move around and turn things over and like puzzle solving using that element would
rather
be really
than using your
interesting.
6-axis to rotate a wheel.
Gabriel Knight would still give me an aneurysm.
I'm not saying you have to make any cat hair mustaches.
All right, I think that's enough with Natal because let's get to it's not just the meat and potatoes. It's like the prime rib and the cream spinach and the spinny salad of
Anything
a
else?
week. Yeah.
Is there bread?
I haven't had lunch.
Dessert?
And I'm thinking of
No rolls?
Does that sound good? It's winter. Prime rib sounds good. Gravy. Anyway,
It's winter in
Modern
LA.
Warfare
Adam.
2. I know they're projecting 12 million in sales. I think they have a good chance of hitting that. It has gotten very, very positive reviews. Matt, obviously you reviewed the game. We have talked about it a lot, so we don't need to go so much into your raw opinion of it. But just where are you sort of right now on the game? I mean, is it?
Well, I'm still having fun with it. I've been through it. I went through on Veteran, and I still like the second playthrough as much as the first. And I've been playing multiplayer, and Abby and I did Spec Ops over the weekend, and that was awesome. And
Yeah, we got 9 more stars left to go.
yeah, some of that stuff is hard.
Out of how many?
69.
69.
Yeah.
And played multiplayer, last night and the night before, and had a good time. And I don't know. I mean, it still has a hold on me. I don't regret the 5.
No. I mean, I just finished up the single player myself. I tried to finish it up last night. My eye got all infected or something like that. Anyway, that's beside the point.
That's a
Yeah,
Sharing.
and it wasn't the game. The game doesn't cause eye infections. But I know there's been a lot of debate surrounding the single-player game versus its length, versus its story structure. At the end of the day, though, I think as I was playing it and some things were coming in through message boards, I started like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to feel about this. My final feeling is I really did enjoy it, and it was far more affecting in places I didn't expect to have that. And I was curious, Brian, I'll just start with you, what your take was in terms of playing on the single-player.
Well, I mean, first of all, in terms of the length, I think it was fine. The game is made for that length. It tells a story. It wraps it up. It's fully contained.
There's no filler.
How long did it take you?
I beat it in about 5.5 hours, and at no point, and this happens a lot when I play games. It happened even in Uncharted 2 toward the middle, where I'll say, it's kind of late. That's a good stopping point for the night. I'll pick it up again tomorrow. Never happened in Modern Warfare 2. I played it. I took a break for dinner, but I played it in one powering on of my Xbox.
Now, Abby, I like in terms of length and this whole debate surrounding it. I mean,
It took her
Yeah.
45 minutes to
Yeah,
beat
about
the
40
game
minutes.
on hardened.
I did. I think the length for me was fine. As I said, there's not really any filler in it. It's kind of like every scene in it. I know Matt have talked about like the best action sequence, from a movie or something.
It's like
pretty,
the AC/DC song of video games. It's the good parts.
I mean, if you play a lot of FPS games, you're used to a lot of filler and a lot of walking around where maybe something spectacular isn't happening. And it's so cinematic and kind of fast paced that. And then the replayability. I mean, I went through Unhardened my first run, then went back on Veteran, which actually took me less time because I knew where everything was. And I loved it the second time around too. And I've gone back and I've played more missions. And then with the Spec Ops, there's so much to do.
Well, and I think the replayability, and like when we talk about replayability, I think for most of us here when we're talking about that, it's not so much, oh, there's more achievements, there's something there, that the core mechanics of this game are so ridiculously solid that the pleasure of playing it through the first time is just as easily replicated in that second playthrough, and maybe even more so because you've really gotten your skill muscle, up and tender.
Sure, and to that point, there's a scene in it, and no spoilers, but is straight from a movie that I particularly like, and I, as soon as I got in there, I was like, oh my god, I know what this is, and I want to. No, I won't. Spoil it,
there's a lot of wish fulfillment in that.
Yeah,
game.
there's a lot
Patrick,
of wish fulfillment.
We haven't heard from you,
And it wasn't Red Dawn.
No,
Because people immediately go for that one. It wasn't Red Dawn.
Avenge me. Anyway, Patrick, what's your impression of the single player?
I'm only about halfway through, but I don't know if it's just me. Like, I haven't played through Modern Warfare again recently, but like I have no idea what the hell is going on in the story, and I'm okay with that because it does feel like it's just a bunch of loosely connected, really cool action sequences, and rather than getting and I've heard the story gets a little more involved and kind of falls
and
apart.
it does.
Towards
I was
the
saying
end.
on the back end, that loose connection does seem to feel a little bit more integrated.
Okay,
because
because I really I know I'm jumping from cool sequence to cool sequence, and I'm like, I don't know how any of this is connected. And because I'm usually not really paying attention to the map scenes as they're transitioning.
Well, that's the story.
And that's the whole story. There's
that
no
is where you
cuts.
get all the plot.
But it doesn't really. I don't care, because that's so irrelevant to any of the real enjoyment.
I'm very mechanical when I play as well, and I appreciate the story and I appreciate the really dramatic sequences in it and the kind of cinematic feel to it. But at the end of the day, I'm like, thing moves, shoot it, like go this way. Like I'm very mechanical.
And that's one of the things I noticed right away, and they get across to you in just the first training when you're setting up to try and train the Afghanistan local police force. And just the gunplay of this game, like as someone that isn't super hardcore into shooters but loves playing them, like just there is no game that feels more natural the moment you set into playing it.
Their
than
execution
Call of
is
Duty.
spectacular.
It's just everything about the way you shoot, set up, fire is just so natural, and I always feel like when I'm moving the stick, like and I'm playing on 360, like it just feels so good, and there's no other game that executes that as well as the Call of Duty series does.
I mean, that's the level of polish you get from a studio like Infinity Ward. Bungie has it for Halo. I mean, the weapons are different, but it's that feel. And so many games that could be excellent miss that part of it, and it's just not satisfying to shoot things.
I think that's.
I mean, they've set the standard for how those kind of games control. Like I go into other stuff, I start playing like Left 4 Dead or something, and I always hit the X button to reload, and I'm like, I was doing.
Now, Matt, with kind of regard to story, I mean, story unfortunately is not irrelevant to this game in the larger scope of things because of the terrorist sequence, which I'll just let you know. I was asked to go on Fox News this morning until I found out it was supposed to be at 3:00 in the morning to talk about it. It is generating.
No one wants to see you at 3:00 in the morning.
You were still up
that ain't
playing
Fox
at that
and friends.
point.
That's Fox and pissy me.
No one is friends at 3 a.m.
Yeah. But that is very integral to the story. I think one of the things that you've been finding in a lot of comments there is that people have either only played that sequence, have only seen that sequence, and without the context of the game as a whole, are missing what is really trying to be accomplished.
Well,
there.
it's like Patrick says, until you finish the game, you don't understand what any of this has to do with each other. And it is all connected, and Act 1 is, there are connections to the whole thing, and obviously no spoilers for late in the game, but you have, before you can judge, you can have an initial reaction to that sequence. I mean, everyone's going to. I found it disturbing, but not particularly problematic because, it's a game. Like I didn't actually kill anybody. I'm good.
How many of you actually? Who were the civilian murderers here?
So I will say that when I loaded the sequence, the game almost asks you to fire upon that first set of civilians you run into, which is the first crowd of people. They're just there. Everyone's shooting. You're incentive, like you've been incentivized as soon as you see someone running around that you're supposed to shoot them. And so that first crowd I did fire into just because at that point I was approaching kind of like, it's a game. And it wasn't until I got through a little bit further and there was, this sort of scripted sequence where someone's, crawling along the floor and I thought well, maybe I should shoot them. And I lined up the shot, and then one of the other terrorists took them out for me.
Well, they really take care of that.
And it's a mercy killing.
I didn't really shoot after the first one, in part because I'm like, well, maybe I shouldn't shoot. And then I thought, I want to watch and see what they did, because there's so much going on there.
You do kind of like, I felt like
there is
I felt a part of it in the beginning, and then as soon as it was playing out, I felt like I was just part of an interactive movie. Yeah. And unfortunately, the part where it falls apart for me is that I thought the whole context of the sequence was that you don't actually have to fire a bullet, but as soon as you leave the civilian part and you have to fight the police task force, there's pretty much like the AI doesn't seem to be doing anything.
No,
Yeah, then you
And I think that is such a cop out. Like the fact that you go through this, you're supposed to be able to go through the civilian part and not shoot anyone, but you can't just fake your way through the part where you fight the police force. I thought like they were just like they should have let you go all the way with that, and I thought it was distressing and I thought disappointing that they went that far, and then all of a sudden we're like, nope, it's back to being a scripted part of the game where you got to kill.
It's
X
game
amount of
wide
guys.
too, because I mean, in COD4, I used to joke that like, wow, I wonder if you could get through this entire game without killing anybody, because your squad really would do a lot more for you, and this one you kind of. You have to do more for yourself.
I think what they were going for was for that part where you have to shoot them. Like they want you to because that it affects you, and they want you to then with what follows up be that much more mad that you had to kill people.
Well, and also I don't think people are taking into account like what you're supposed to be thinking the guy you're playing is feeling. I mean, this is a private from the army. He's the same guy as the beginning scenes where you get handpicked by Shepard to be in this operation, and you're undercover, and when you're undercover you have to stay undercover no matter what, and if they don't want you to do what you're going to have to do, they will pull you out because they're monitoring you.
That's why
and
I
no
shot
one
people,
pulls
'cause
him
I
out,
didn't know.
so he has to do it. I mean, think about what this guy's thinking. This is an American soldier.
I got really into I kind of psyched myself out with that, because I thought as I was walking through, I didn't want to shoot anybody at first, and then I go, oh God, if I don't shoot someone, they're going to know that I'm a plant and I'm going to be screwed. And then I started, and then I was like, oh, I'll just fire on this guy crawling around. Like I'm doing something.
I'm a terrorist.
Yeah,
it's a weird. And then, but the funny thing is, like, while that sequence didn't bother me all that much, because it was, there's a very much artifice to it. As soon as somebody's dead, you can even the other characters are walking through them like they're not there. There's no clipping there. But I found in the next level, in the Wolverines level, I was thinking about the Russian soldiers I was killing and how like, well, that guy has a virtual family and a virtual life back home, and he's bleeding out in the parking lot of the Burger Town. Because I shot him.
Talking about once we've gone to the invasion
I
sequence.
started thinking, because I was thinking more about, wow, you're trying to think about these guys as civilians in the airport sequence, but then I was thinking, well, maybe what if you think about everybody as a person? And now you've got these Russian soldiers over here under the false pretense.
Yeah, they've been duped as well.
Everyone's been duped. Tens of thousands of people lose their lives in this game
because
of this one
game.
And when you think about that, what you actually do in that airport sequence is so insignificant compared to the tens of thousands of people who die as a result of it. And it's just that chain reaction that can start from just how it's called modern warfare, and it's like no one's off limits anymore.
I mean, I think one of the things that impressed me so much about this game, and this goes back to COD4, where I was playing, and this is back when my wife and I shared a one bedroom, and so I had to wear headphones when I played, especially games like COD. And she came by and she said, and she was watching me play, and she goes, "Are you enjoying this?" And I thought, okay, I can see what you're saying from what you're watching. Even more so, if it felt a little bit closer to sort of that cinematic thing where I go to have the experience, I don't go there necessarily just for visceral pleasure. Because I found that when the war does come to Washington, and I used to joke, oh, look, it's Fallout 2. Before, that's how all the buildings get dirty. That it was very affecting. I mean, there was a bit where you're in a helicopter outside of the White House where it was just, I was sort of doing it, but it just had this very disquieting effect. I think that's what Infinity Ward was trying to go for.
And I think that's okay. Like, I mean, games need to do...
Multiplayer's for the visceral fun.
Yeah. Well, I'm in my end of the year, got to play all this stuff I didn't get around to playing sequence, and I'm playing The Lost and the Damned at the same time right now. And that's also a game in which you're doing horrible things with a bunch of horrible people. And, in the same way as the terrorist thing, kind of, the unfun, it's disturbing, but it's also engaging. And, like, it reminds me of, like, I don't like any single person in the movie Goodfellas, but that's a great movie.
Right.
Like, it doesn't have to be...
Enjoyment is kind of... It's different based on what... You can enjoy... I don't enjoy Schindler's List, but it's a phenomenal film.
No, that's an excellent example.
That's always kind of the go-to example.
Modern Warfare 2 is Schindler's List.
It's a different kind of enjoyment.
It's a great point, and it's a threshold that games seem to be on now. And I think you're seeing like kind of camps of people who are like, wow, I'm interested in seeing this medium kind of take this risk. And then other people are saying this medium should not be taking this risk. And like there seems to be a line of debate about that right now.
And I think it comes down to interactivity. That
Yeah.
if you interact, somehow you're condoning.
Well, these types of things have been explored in all types of media and books and TV and movies. But the fact that it's interactive makes people freak out because they think for some reason, oh, it's going to train people to do this, or it's more real because you press a button to do it. But really, I mean, it's no different than pressing play on a DVD and watching it.
Or like, why do people freak out about something like this? But walk into a bookstore, pick up a Stephen King book, and read some of the stuff. Read
that
Apt
takes
Pupil.
a lot more. That takes a lot more effort.
Anyone can go into Barnes and Noble, pick up Apt Pupil, and learn about what happens in that story.
Yes, they don't have ratings on books yet, which is interesting
because nobody reads.
I mean, it is one of those things where everyone thinks that the interactivity somehow you feel like you experienced it, and then you go out and you replicate that behavior. And to kind of tie it into Fox News asking me to come on, I think what's so interesting is I have yet to see anyone since the game came out shoot anybody at an airport. And then look at Glenn Beck getting some people to actually go out and, compare healthcare to the Holocaust.
Yeah.
I mean, there I am seeing people being affected. I mean, but yeah, once again, it's a different medium that doesn't seem to be resonating with an entire generation who are somehow scared of it. But I got to say, as Matt kind of said, there are people within sort of our colleagues who are. It's okay if you don't approve or you don't like that sequence in the game. But yeah.
And I think there's definitely a discussion to be had over the execution of that sequence.
Yeah. Sure.
But whether or not it should exist, that's
I know
a different
it's it's like I'm not a big fan of Rex Reed, and I just hope that we don't have that large a faction in what is only a nascent art form. So really go read some of that guy's reviews. You clearly love movies. All right, I think that's it. We're gonna. I don't think we have time for our question of the week. It is an interesting one. I think it merits a little bit more discussion. So
you can also if we don't have ever time to do questions of the week on feedback. Andrew Pfister's new reply to all every Friday mailbag. Any question that goes into the feedback question of the week post on Tuesdays could potentially get answered there by any of us or Andrew. So if it doesn't get answered here, look to that, and that runs on every Friday.
And actually, if obviously there is going to be a lot of discussion, I think, surrounding Modern Warfare 2. And as time goes on, we'll be able to speak more comfortably without spoiling the rest of the game. I think we'll give ourselves about 2 more weeks. You should be done with the game by then.
Yeah, most people hopped right into multiplayer.
If you're going to complain so much about how short it is, you better be done.
Well put. And speaking of short, I want to thank, I don't know why I just said that. I'm just going to thank our guest, Matt Kyle, Patrick Klepek, Abby Heppy, Brian Leahy. Always a pleasure to have you here. I kind of like, it's a little warmer in the studio in these cold months to have one extra body. So I think it was good.
Cold months in LA.
Cold LA.
All right, we'll see you guys next week, which will involve the releases of Assassin's Creed and Left 4 Dead 2, among many other things that'll probably happen in the week to come. Take care.
I think I have them upside down.
Because someone's going to notice.